everyone. My name is Representative Amanda Elizabeth Toll, and I represent Keene at Large in the New Hampshire State House. And I am here today with my friends and my colleagues, Renee Monteil and Jodi Newell. And both of them serve on the Keene Democrats with me. And additionally, the Cheshire Democrats has a Reproductive Rights subcommittee, and we work on that together. We're here today because we want to talk about the attacks on bodily autonomy happening in the New Hampshire State House. And we also want to share our personal stories to give a human face to the abortion issue. All three of us are abortion storytellers, and so you'll be hearing a little bit from each of us tonight about that. As we do our work, we want to really emphasize that the feminist slogan that the political is the personal, and what goes on in Concord has real impacts on Granite Staters' lives. So I'm going to begin by giving an overview of the bills that are going to be coming up this week, because we need people to weigh in to help defend reproductive freedom. So on Wednesday, we have 3 bills coming up that really threaten abortion access in the state of New Hampshire. So on Wednesday, February 9th, we're encouraging people to go to the either the State House to testify in opposition to, or you can sign in on the New Hampshire General Court website in opposition to the following bills. So at 9 a.m., HB 1181, which would allow the biological father of an unborn child to petition the court for an injunction prohibiting the biological mother from having an abortion. Obviously very scary. At 10, HB 1477, prohibiting abortions after the detection of a fetal heartbeat. At 1 p.m., HB 1625, repealing the prohibition on entering or remaining on a public way or sidewalk adjacent to a reproductive health care facility. Obviously, we don't want people being harassed directly in their faces as they enter a reproductive health clinic. And so we oppose all of those bills being heard on the 9th. And again, I'll repeat the numbers. It's HB 1181, HB 1477, and HB 1625. On Thursday, February 10th, we have some good bills coming to protect bodily autonomy, and we encourage folks to sign in support of these bills, or come to the State House and testify in person in support of these bills. At 9 a.m., we're going to hear CACR 18. I'm actually the prime sponsor of that bill, and that provides that the state shall not infringe or unduly inconvenience the right of reproductive medical decisions, and that would add reproductive rights to the New Hampshire State Constitution. At 10 a.m., is going to be HB 1673, relative to women's health privacy and repealing the Fetal Health Protection Act. So this is a repeal of New Hampshire's abortion ban and mandatory ultrasound requirement, which of course is just in place to shame people who are exercising their reproductive choice, to force them to undergo a mandatory ultrasound. So we want that in the New Hampshire abortion ban repealed. So that's what HB 1673 does. And the final one at 1 p.m. is HB 1674, which is relative to reproductive rights. It's the Access to Abortion Care Act. And that would add protections to make sure that there's no further restrictions on abortion in the state of New Hampshire. And so again, we want people to sign in support of the Thursday bills or testify in support. CACR 18, HB 1673, and HB 1674. And so now that you know what's coming up in the New Hampshire State House, both and these terrible bills to harm reproductive rights, and I just forgot to give a little background, so I want to do that for a moment before we go into our personal stories, is that this past legislative session, we had a budget that put into statute an abortion ban on abortions later in pregnancy, which is something that is deeply personal to people and should be absolutely decided between providers and their patients. The state should never be interfering with that. It can only do harm when the state interferes with people's rights to have bodily autonomy. And so that happened already. And also the Republican legislature in the budget put this mandatory ultrasound requirement into statute, making it so everyone, no matter where they were in pregnancy, would be required to undergo this invasive, medically oftentimes unnecessary procedure in order to have an abortion. And we know nowadays with medical abortion, for example, that isn't always necessary. And so that, again, should be decided between patients and their providers, not Republicans in the New Hampshire legislature. And so with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Renee Monteil, who is Keene's, to my knowledge, only full spectrum doula, meaning that she provides care to women when they're, or birthing people, when they are expecting and they need a birth doula, or postpartum care, or when they need an abortion. So Renee is doing all three of those things. And so she has some unique perspectives on reproductive health care. And also Renee, my friend and fellow activist, has had an abortion and is also a mother of 2 children. So I'm going to turn it over to Renee to talk about her story, how this work has impacted the combination of your work and your personal story has impacted your views on reproductive justice and how you feel about the current legislation that's happening in New Hampshire. So take it away, Renee.
Yes, well, I had an abortion when my first child was 1. Circumstances led me to make that decision as a mother, and I think that's one of the things that we need to be very cognizant of, is the majority of people that are deciding to have abortions are already mothers. They have families. And that's huge. Because what does that tell us? That tells us that people are trying to make the best decisions for their families, not just for themselves, but for their families. You know, one of the things that I've had to do a number of times is walk people into the clinic. And we're lucky here in Keene, as usually there's only 2 people standing outside. It's very small. And I have sat in the room with women, holding their hands and listening to them cry and tell me their stories. And it's really heartbreaking. Some of these women are escaping dangerous abusive partners, you know, barely making it out alive. The stories I've heard are just horrifying. And the last thing anybody needs to do is to take away women's freedom to be able to make the best decisions for their families. These bans don't just hurt us as women. They hurt our children, they hurt our families, and ultimately they hurt our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree full-heartedly. And we know that people from all walks of life, all religions, yes, all races, even all genders, like we are being called upon to, you know, we know trans folks need this care too sometimes. And so like that this can impact all people, yes, with a uterus. Absolutely. It can affect their families, and as you were saying, it can impact their communities, because if we don't have control over our reproduction, we really don't have control over our lives.
No. And I feel that when it comes down to these bans, that ultimately it's violent. It's a violent act against people's bodily autonomy. And when we're trying to support our families, I know people that are struggling to feed their children in a climate right now where we are having the cost of living is rising exponentially. We are having problems, feeding people and housing people, and then to deny them, this thing that could help them focus on raising the family that they already have. This is a violent act against our communities, and we need to really see it that way. And, that's what I want to do. I want to bring attention to the fact that this is huge. This isn't just about us personally. This is about, it's a family issue, not just a personal issue.
I agree with you full-heartedly, Renee. Really well said. And I think it's so important to emphasize that the same people who are attacking our reproductive rights, especially the right to have an abortion, they're also the ones who want to cut social services. Like us as reproductive rights activists, I know Jodi, Renee, myself, and we all share a belief that people both have the right not to have children and an abortion justice, but also that people have the right to have children. And when they do have children, have the resources that they need to raise them well. And so while the Republicans are cutting off abortion access, they're simultaneously making it harder and harder to take care of your family.
And it's just going to sink women, especially, people that are single moms, right? Who, like myself, sink us into further poverty of trying to support our families. And how is that going to be beneficial to anyone, not just in our communities, statewide, countrywide?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Jodi, everyone, I'm so excited to have Jodi here, like another, not just a colleague, but truly a friend. Would you want to tell us a little bit about your story and how it impacts your feelings about what's going on in the New Hampshire legislature and your activism and feelings about reproductive justice?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to kind of pick up where Renee left off and in the conversation between y'all is it's interesting how there's shame on either end, right? So it's like shame, what we're talking about, one of these bills in here, we're talking about repealing it's essentially a buffer zone around, where someone would need to go for an abortion. And, taking that away. But what is that really to have people, stand out front of an abortion clinic? I mean, I remember when I needed to go for an abortion, I had 2 little kids. I was a single mom. I was not in a place where I could do that. And if I made the decision to have another child, I would be taking away from my existing children. I would be throwing my entire family into a bad situation. So I had to go, and I went in Boston to the whatever it is there, Planned Parenthood there. And I remember having to walk past this man. So here's this decision that I had to make. Not only that, I mean, I grew up going to the March for Life with my mom. I came from a family where this was something that was, that was really, really looked down on. It was looked on as if it was murder. And so I was brought up in that situation, and I had to go through this whole kind of process of making that decision with that baggage and all of that stuff. And so to come to the decision that, yes, no, this really is what I need to do for my family, for myself and my family. And then, to be walking in and to be essentially accosted by someone who's telling me that what I'm doing is murder and it's immoral. I've made the decision, trust me. It took me a lot to get to that point, and I really did think it through. I looked into it, found out everything, and made that decision, a very informed and a very personal decision. And then to go there, and that's essentially, like I'm saying, that's the shame that's inflicted on you. That all of these laws that's what it wants to do. That's what it aims to do, is to shame a woman who makes that decision, shame someone who makes that decision. And so, and then on the other end of it, then if you need to rely on social services, then you're shamed in that respect. We have this welfare queen mentality. So to me, it's this, it's like you can't ever satisfy. It's these things that put you in a situation where you can't win, whether you do or you don't. But whether you do or you don't has nothing to do with anyone else. It is a very personal decision to make. And so, that's why I come to this.
Thank you so much, Jodi. Like, such a powerful story, and we're so grateful for you sharing and for your continued advocacy in our community. Really, genuinely, just could not be more grateful to be working alongside you folks. And we are just, the three of us, I know, feel really strongly that we are going to continue to go to bat for Granite Staters by advocating that all people, regardless of race, class, gender, sexual orientation, have the right to not have children. And when they do have children, have the resources and support to do so. And we ask you to please join us in this fight. We need your voice. We need your activism. Get involved with the Keene Dems. Get involved with the Cheshire Dems. If you're outside of those areas, get involved in your local community's reproductive rights activism. And if you are here in New Hampshire, once again, we ask you on Wednesday, the 9th, to be signing in on the New Hampshire General Court website if you can't testify in person in opposition to the 3 anti-choice bills that will be coming up before the Judiciary Committee. Once again, they're HB 1181, HB 1477, and HB 1625. And on Thursday, to please join in support on the New Hampshire General Court website, signing in to support CACR 18, HB 1673, HB 1674. All 3 of those bills on Thursday are going to help protect and expand access to reproductive health care in our state. Thanks again so very much for joining us tonight. We look forward to continuing to do more of these segments, letting you know what's going on in our state. Thank you, Renee, and thank you, Jodi. Have a good night, everyone.